Way out at the frozen, lonely edge of our solar system, there's Pluto. For decades, we just saw it as this tiny, faint point of light. But it was holding on to a massive secret. It wasn't alone. It had a kind of ghost haunting our earliest photographs, a companion that was about to completely change how we saw the entire outer solar system.
So you might think a story like this starts with some grand planned search for a new moon. But nope, this one begins with a mistake, a simple imperfection on a glass photographic plate that once somebody really looked at it, held the key to a whole new world.
Yeah, so our story kicks off not in the cold vacuum of space, but in a dusty archive, with a flawed photograph and one astronomer who had the incredibly keen eye to see a discovery where everyone else just saw a defect.
Okay, so picture this. It's June 22nd, 1978, and an astronomer named James Christy is looking at these old photographic plates of Pluto. A lot of them had even been marked defective because Pluto looked like a weird stretched-out blob. But Christy noticed something everyone else had missed. And here's his big aha moment. The stars in the background? They were perfectly sharp, little pinpricks of light. See, if it were a problem with the telescope, everything would be blurry. So that bulge, it had to be real. He then starts digging through the archives, finds the same flaw on plates going all the way back to 1965, and confirms it was circling Pluto every 6.4 days. And just like that, it all clicked into place. The ghost on the photographic plate, that flaw, was a massive moon. The fact that its orbit was 6.4 days, the exact same amount of time it takes Pluto to rotate once, was the final piece of the puzzle. They were locked together in this perfect, synchronous dance.
Now, as the guy who found it, Christy got to propose a name, and he chose Charon. At first, it was a really sweet tribute to his wife Charlene. Her nickname was Char. But then, in a coincidence that is just almost too good to be true, he later found out that in Greek mythology, Charon is the ferryman who carries souls across the river Styx to the underworld, which is, of course, the realm ruled by the god Pluto. I mean, you couldn't write it better. The name was perfect.
But here's the thing. Finding Charon was so much more than just ticking another moon off the list. Its existence sent absolute shockwaves through the scientific community. It forced a complete rethink of what Pluto was, and even challenged our very definition of a planet-moon system.
You see, by tracking Charon's orbit, astronomers could finally figure out Pluto's true mass, and the result was, whoa, Pluto was way, way lighter than anyone thought. And just look at this comparison. Our moon is about 1.2% of Earth's mass. That's pretty significant. But Charon, it's a staggering 12% of Pluto's mass. That ratio is completely off the charts compared to any other major moon in the solar system.
This incredible size difference leads to a really, really unique dynamic. And to get it, we've got to talk about something called the barycenter. It's basically the center of mass, the balancing point, that two orbiting bodies revolve around.
Okay, so think about it like this. For the Earth and our moon, that barycenter, that balancing point, is deep inside the Earth. So the moon makes this huge orbit around us, and the Earth just does this tiny little wobble. But Pluto and Charon, they're so close in mass that their barycenter is actually out in the empty space between them. They are literally dancing around an invisible point in space together. And this is exactly why so many scientists started calling them a double planet. And it gets even weirder. They're what's called mutually tidally locked. So not only does Charon always show the same face to Pluto, like our moon does to us, but Pluto also always shows the same face to Charon. Just try to imagine that. If you were standing on one side of Pluto, you'd see this enormous moon just hanging in the sky, completely motionless, never rising, never setting, just there. It's an eternal stare down across thousands of kilometers of space. So the big question is, how in the world did a pair like this even form? Well, the leading theory suggests their relationship wasn't some gentle coming together. It was the result of a violent, cosmic origin story. At first, everyone thought, oh, a giant impact, right? Kind of like the one that formed our own moon. But a super high-speed collision would have just shattered these two small, icy worlds. The theory that actually fits the evidence way better is, well, it's a lot more poetic. It's called the cosmic kiss. This was a much slower, grazing impact, where the two bodies sort of briefly merged before tidal forces gently pulled them apart again, leaving them forever bound by gravity. And this is where that formation story gets really, really important. That collision,
plus all the insane tidal friction as they settled into their orbit, pumped a massive amount of heat deep inside both worlds. And for Charon, that trapped energy was actually enough to melt its interior, creating a vast liquid water ocean hiding beneath a solid crust of ice.
For 37 years after we found it, Charon was just this fuzzy dot in our telescopes. But then, July 14, 2015, the New Horizons spacecraft flew past, and in an instant, that dot became a real, vibrant, complex world. And what it saw was absolutely stunning.
The very first images that came back, they showed a world that had, at some point, literally ripped itself apart. Charon is just scarred by this massive system of canyons, with its deepest chasms plunging an incredible 7.5 kilometers deep into the crust.
I mean, to give you some perspective, this whole canyon system is more than 4 times as long and nearly 5 times deeper than our own Grand Canyon. It's just staggering. And these aren't canyons carved by rivers. They're gigantic, pull-apart faults. The entire world was stretched to its absolute breaking point.
So what could do this? How does a whole world crack open? Well, the answer goes right back to that hidden ocean. As Charon cooled down over millions of years, that liquid water started to freeze. And here's the key bit of physics. When water freezes, it expands. It's simple, right? But on a planetary scale, that expanding subsurface ice pushed relentlessly outwards on the crust, stretching it until it just finally snapped, creating those massive canyons we see today.
But wait, there's more. That freezing ocean didn't just crack the crust. The immense pressure also forced this slushy mix of water and ammonia, basically icy lava or cryomagma, up through those giant fissures. This stuff flooded Charon's southern hemisphere, paving right over the older, cratered terrain and creating these vast, smooth plains that we now call Vulcan planitia.
And that brings us to maybe the weirdest, most striking feature on all of Charon, this dark, reddish-brown stain that caps its north pole. It's a feature, informally and I think perfectly, named Mordor macula.
Scientists are pretty sure the color comes from these things called tholins. Now basically, think of it like this. You take simple stuff like methane gas, you hit it with ultraviolet radiation from the sun for a long, long time, and it creates this complex reddish kind of tar-like gunk. That's tholins. But the big question is, where did the methane come from in the first place?
Well, there are 2 main theories, 2 main suspects. The first one is that it's actually a gift from Pluto. Methane gas is constantly escaping Pluto's thin atmosphere, and Charon's gravity is just strong enough to snatch some of it. It then freezes solid onto the super-cold poles, where sunlight cooks it into tholins. The other theory is that it was an inside job, that the methane was actually dissolved in Charon's own subsurface ocean and got released during those huge cryovolcanic eruptions, before eventually freezing out at the poles.
So, when you put it all together, what's the legacy of this incredible world? It is so much more than just a moon. Charon is the key that unlocked Pluto's true nature. It told us the story of their shared violent birth. Its cracked surface is a frozen record of a lost ocean. And that red cap, well, it might just be a gift, actively being painted, even today, by Pluto's own escaping atmosphere. Charon is the essential other half of this completely unique double planet.
You know, this whole journey started with a little smudge on a photographic plate, something that was almost thrown out as an error. And it ends with this complex, dramatic, incredible world. It's just a powerful reminder that sometimes our greatest discoveries are hiding right there in our mistakes, which really just leaves you wondering, what else is out there, waiting in the data, just disguised as a simple flaw?